This week on Dig Me Out.
And I don't know if you saw me come. I am a man who fell from the sun, yeah. I've been falling ever since I lost my wings. But with experience you learn about these things. You can't fix what's
With your hosts, Jason Diaz and Tim Minichi.
Jay, we're back again with another episode thanks to our Dig Me Out Union on Patreon. You can help us make the next episode happen by joining us at dmounion.com or digmeoutunion.com. Speaking of the union, we have a union member. He's been here before. He's back again. Welcome back, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me again. Doing good. Hopefully, I hope my audio is not out of sync. I might be either speaking before you or after you. I don't know what's going on.
You already answered the question that I didn't even ask yet. It's amazing. You're speaking so ahead of me. No, you're fine. You're fine. You've had albums in the past. You've joined us, I think, for roundtables even.
A couple of them.
A couple of them. Maybe Modest Mouse in the past. Was that one of them? No. Jeez, why? I get everybody wrong with the
trying
with
to
the
pin
roundtable.
Modest Mouse on everybody. No. So what was it? The first one was albums of 1990, I think.
Sure.
Or it could have been the sophomore slump revisited for Dada, American Highway Flower.
Let me pull these up here. We got Ned's Atomic Dustbin.
Thank
Right.
you.
That was
Murray
last
Attaway.
year before.
B-sides of the 90s.
Oh yeah.
Dada. American Highway Flower. Albums of 1990. And Reverse. Sophomore Slump Reversed. Is that all? Is that everything?
That should be it. Yeah, that should be it.
That's your full portfolio here at Dig Me Out.
It's your resume. I'm checking it out.
Yeah. So what'd you bring us this time? Tell everyone. Share the album and the artist.
So this is a album from 1996, I believe, called Derailer from a band called Little John, not the shitty crunk rapper Little John, an
And
actual
not,
band.
Little John from Big Chuck and Little John for all those Clevelanders out there. Because that would be Little John.
Little John. Yeah.
Wait. You got turned down for what from Little John? So he's not terrible. You get that.
Yeah.
You also get Low with the East Side Boys. And he's on Yeah by Usher, which is again classic. So let's give Little John some slack.
I don't know. I just figure we're talking about people that write their own music today. So
Zip.
Continue.
Zing, pow.
Tell us about Little
John.
So it's kind of hard to find stuff about them. They don't really have a Wikipedia page. They actually have a Facebook page that I think hasn't been updated in 2 years. And the last time it was, the songwriter in the band and the singer and guitarist Seth Freeman, I think, just performed, I think, this album in its entirety over 3 separate sessions. Not the greatest performance in the world. It was just him with a guitar and like a bad mic. So, but yeah, I think they're out of Boston or somewhere near Boston. And like I said, the main guy is Seth. And they only did 3 albums. In fact, I think this one actually was put out on their own label first, Crane Mountain Records, and then they got picked up by EMI, and I think EMI had them re-record Shoelace. And so that ended up, that was the first single I heard from them on 97X back in 96. And I was like, this sounds like They Might Be Giants singing over some Dinosaur Jr. stuff. So I think I'm going to pick this up and check it out. It's about all I really know, about the band. I mean, it's really hard to find anything on them.
Yeah.
That is true. What do you know about... So I show on Discogs they only have 2 albums. Too Much Fun came out in 2000. And then there's a cassette that came out. It was like a 2-song cassette in 93. Probably a demo cassette. Plus a couple 7-inches. What is the third album that you're referencing?
So the year after this one was We'll Always Have Ohio. that was put out on. I actually have it here. It was put out on Crane Mountain, but also Beloved Entertainment Group. So I guess it was a. Guess they were getting a little bit of help with the distribution there, and then it wasn't until 2000 that Too Much Fun came out, and Too Much Fun is he has a completely different rhythm section. They had the same drummer for the first two albums, same bass player for most of the first album and all of the second album. The third album is a different drummer and bass player, which I actually just realized. I was just looking at the liner notes, and I had originally downloaded those albums from a link that Seth, is it Seth Freeman? Is that his name?
Yes.
I think, yeah. He had something up at one point where he was sharing the albums. You could just download them because they're out of print. But I think 3 or 4 songs on We'll Always Have Ohio, he didn't offer for download. He didn't say why, but I think it was probably because they were co-authored by Stefano, who's the bass player. So I ended up picking up the out of print albums on Amazon about a year ago or so, and then set them by my computer and forgot why I set them there, and eventually took them downstairs. And then when I was looking at this stuff to share, I realized I was still missing those tracks in my library. So I had to bring the CDs back up and import them. They were like, I had 160K tracks. I was like, no, this isn't right. I got to fix this.
Yeah.
So the only thing I still have 160K on is the thing that's called Number 4, which it's only 3 songs. So I don't know if you consider that an EP or single with a couple of B-sides or what, but I think that was the last thing that they did. I don't even know the album credits on it. That was it. Sometime very early in the 2000s, they wrapped it up.
It's interesting. It's not listed in Discogs, but if you go to oldies.com, which I just discovered is a website, you can order a used copy from there. Oldies.com.
Yeah, makes me feel really good.
Elderly singles?
Yeah, seriously. Buy some CDs, meet
dating
some
on
people. There? It's got like
get a complimentary tube of Ben Gay with each CD purchase.
Yes. We got some comments over at our Patreon page from our patrons. We'll discuss their votes in the poll at the end of this, but let's talk about some of these comments. Steven Muzinski said an obscure one and done, which is actually not true. It's not even on YouTube. Yes, please. This was I feel like the more difficult the music is to find, people get excited about its obscurity.
We're really doing some archaeology here.
Seriously. This was a really fun listen. The vocals very distinctive to my ears. On a song like Shoelace, it comes across as a less tortured J Mascis, even though the music sounds a bit like Dino, albeit through amps that definitely do not go to 11. But for the majority of the album, he kind of sounds more like the guy from They Might Be Giants or something, which tends not to work as well for me. Another comparison that came to mind when listening was Limb Lifter. Anyway, after a few listens, I'm a little torn between EP and Worthy Album. For me, it's an EP. I take Derailer, Scared, Shoelace, Finally Got It, Down on Me, and Weighted Down. But the songs that don't work aren't necessarily bad songs. I think it's just more of a preference thing. So I'm going to call it a Worthy Album. You responded, I will not read that comment. Patrick Testa said, I saw they put out a second and third album on a label called Crane Mountain, which Discogs shows also releasing 4-song demos, a couple 7 inches, which you talked about. Wasn't until track 5, Evel Knievel, before the vocals showed me some They Might Be Giant-isms. But that song reminds me of the President of the United States of America, as does the band in general. I have to add, the vocals sound so god darn good. I want to find the independent stuff to hear the difference. The drums are bombastic. Fun album. Willie Dillon said, I like the production on this. Sometimes the singing is a bit silly sounding, and I would say his voice is the weakest link, but overall it's fine. Among the influences already listed in the comments, I can hear some slight Nirvana influence, primarily in the guitar at times, but with a lot of grunge removed. the band is pretty tight overall. Anyway, it's probably a better EP for me as it doesn't really electrify my brain juices. Electrify
Ugh.
My Brain Juices will be the
Yeah,
name of the next Primus album.
yeah.
But it's a decent listen. To which Jeremy responded, "It's okay, everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion." So much sass. And then Willie said, "Hey, I thought it was pretty nice."
I didn't see that.
He responded almost immediately after you made your sassy comment. So Jay, I'd not heard of this band.
Ew.
I'm guessing you had not either.
No, I had not. Had no expectations. No point of reference whatsoever. The name doesn't clue you in a whole lot either. So,
Well, Jay, you should have.
why?
Because this band and their song Finally Got It were on the Beverly Hills Ninja soundtrack from 1997, starring
What does it
none
have
other
to
than
do
Chris
with me?
Farley.
I'm sure that didn't leave your CD player for months.
So some of the other songs on this soundtrack include Patty Rothberg covering Kung Fu Fighting, Right Said Fred's I'm Too Sexy, Carl Douglas doing the original Kung Fu Fighting, Wars Lowrider, Baltimora Tarzan Boy, the Hazies doing Turning Japanese, Lene Lovich from, I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce the name, but she's a new wave singer had solo albums in the late 70s and early 80s. She did, I think, We're Alone Now. And then George Clinton did the closing end song. So a diverse soundtrack that I don't know how Little John ended up there with like Blondie and War, and must have been an let me see what label, EMI. That's why it was. This was released on EMI, and the soundtrack was released on EMI.
Well, also, I heard a story. I've heard it a couple of times, but I heard it again recently, and I think it had to do with Chris Farley. He, I think, might have had a tendency to see people in concert and then hit them up and say, "Hey, you should be on my next movie soundtrack."
So that sounds like what he would do.
Yeah, because he did that to. I think he did that to Poster Children. I can't remember which movie it was, but they asked if they could see the movie first, and they were turned down, and they said, "Well, no, we don't want to be on the soundtrack then."
Dang.
You know, I mean, they're kind of political. You know, it's a little risky. You know, just saying, "Yeah, sure, put our song on a soundtrack."
Right.
It turns out that who knows.
I mean, if it was Chris Farley, it was going to be like probably a safe bet that it wasn't going to be a very political movie. I mean, I guess
Right.
Tommy Boy has some political elements to it. If you want to dig down into the capitalism versus, I don't know. It's probably a thesis paper to write on Tommy Boy.
Nepotism.
Yeah, there you go. Nepotism in 20th century American business, which has caused the decline of the American empire. Ergo, Chris Farley. Let's talk about this record. Jay, tell me one thing you liked about Derailer by Little John.
It's got some really clever, legitimate hooks. I found myself walking around the house, singing in the back of my head, Derailer, Shoelace, Finally Got It. I thought it's really, sharp writing. The vocals are really strong. There's some cool harmonies. And then there's a deceptively complex guitar thing going on in this record. I thought some of the chord progressions were unexpected. There's a cool range of tones too. There's some cleans, there's some fuzz, there's some really interesting effects used here and there. Even some of the parts I thought were pretty cool. Derailer and Shoelace, for example, have these guitar parts kind of underneath. They're not like the main riff. They're like the secondary or a layer that really add a unique tone to the songs. Almost sound like they're played backwards or something. I don't know what the effect is. But it just gives this extra layer, I think, of of complexity and makes it sound unique. And then it's just a fun, almost like a 90s mixtape. I think it sounds cohesive, but I also heard a ton of other bands here. And you've mentioned a bunch of them, Tim, already in the comments. You start off getting a strong They Might Be Giants presence of the USA vibe. But then when you get to Shoelace, I was kind of taken aback, not expecting us to take a turn into Dinosaur Jr. territory.
That's not a thing I wanna know, no. I don't wanna know when you come back. If I hear that, I might crack past the point where I'll listen. I don't wanna know what I've been missing. And I'm hanging by a shoelace. I don't wanna deal with this place. I try to run from things I can't face, but I'm tripping on my shoelace. Already told you I would leave.
But also really well written and hooky song. I heard some Meat Puppets. I heard a little Weezer here and there. Not that it was derivative in any way, but it reminded me very much of a particular types of bands in the mid '90s. I think it sounds consistent and their own, but it's also kind of fun in that it sounds very much of that time and kind of takes you back there. So those are some of the things I liked. What worked for you, Tim?
I think what you mentioned is all spot on, and I just really like the energy of a lot of this record. It reminded me, oddly enough, of some of the stuff that Graham Coxon did as a solo artist outside of Blur. Happiness in Magazines is a very poppy, it's almost a power pop record, and some of his solo stuff is very experimental and not poppy at all. But that record in particular has 2.5 minute long, very tight pop songs with his unique take on guitar playing, which is what I heard, which I connected to him, is that, and I think you brought it up too, there is some really weird but interesting guitar parts that are not the main guitar part, but are just sort of layered in. And it got me thinking about that aspect. Now, obviously, there's songs like Evel Knievel, which have a very Presidents of the United States vibe. I actually didn't get They Might Be Giants, other than his voice here and there. But like musically, this was much more in my ballpark than They Might Be Giants is or are.
No accordion.
Yeah. If you're gonna do the accordion, yeah, it's got to be done in a way that I'm gonna be able to handle it, and they don't. But Shoelace, the Dinosaur Jr. comparison is obvious. It sounds like Green Mind era Dinosaur Jr. It's like after they got rid of the lo-fi, but before Jay Mascis turned it into a solo extravaganza on like Where You Been and Without a Sound. Like it's in that sweet spot right there where he's still kind of just writing these short, noisy songs. But even the melody and the part of that song gets into like Dinosaur Jr. or Jay Mascis territory in certain parts. But I didn't think it was enough. I mean, it sounded like, okay, well, they're from Boston, and yeah, they probably saw Dinosaur Jr. a bunch of times. So it's going to rub off on a noisy guitar rock band. I think this is like a weird lineage where it's like Dinosaur Jr. and then like this band and then a band like Yuck in the 2000s, which had those Dinosaur Jr. elements with short poppy songs, just like a lot of feedback and noise. And I like that this is a little bit more refined. There's some really strong songwriting here. There's a lot of like really well thought out dynamics. Derailer has them. I mean, that's a short song, and there are a ton of dynamics in that song. Stops and starts and tempo, and it's just, it sounds like was this a 3-piece when they were together, or was it a 4-piece, Jeremy?
It's been a 3-piece all along. I haven't seen
Okay.
anything indicating that they bring like another guitarist on tour, which makes me wonder how they do some of this stuff, how they pull it off.
Yeah. It sounded like a really tight 3-piece band that played together for a while, and based on their chronology of putting out 7 inches, 2-3 years before this, that makes sense. Because I think it, right out the bat, I mean, Derailer is such a strong song, and really like the first, half of this record is just boom, 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 really strong songs. And then they get a little bit more diverse on the back half, but I mean, it's 35 minutes, which is crazy for a 90s album. Thank God for them. And yeah, I just like the overall vibe of it. It's a little raw, but it's not undercooked. Like everything sounds, even if it's a little bit drier or not as produced, it sounds urgent. There's an urgency to a lot of this that I really like. You can feel them pushing up against the click track as opposed to just sitting on it.
I think some of that comes from the drumming too.
Yeah.
I think one of the comments mentioned described it as bombastic, which I would agree with.
Oh yeah, it definitely, that reminded me of a number of different artists. One though that hasn't been brought up, but every once in a while, melodically, he reminded me of like the early Fountains of Wayne. Just because there's like a pop hook in so many of these songs, and that's what they were so good at.
Yeah.
Jeremy, Oh, go ahead, Jay.
Well, I was going to throw one other band that came up in my mind was on Scared. The harmony in the chorus, it's a very Alice in Chains melody and harmony approach.
My years are catching up with me, and I'm still young. I know I gotta keep my head or I might get sunk. I know I've got to give it steam to get ahead. I'm moving upstream and I'm tired, but I'm not gonna fall asleep again. I'm scared of standing in one place. I'm scared of slowing down the pace, and I just can't control my fear. No, I just can't control my fear.
Not that musically it sounds like them, but like if you just listen to the vocal like notes, it felt like something I could hear.
I believe that's a fourth, Jay. If my stealing from my more musically educated friends, someone once said that the thing that made Alice in Chains vocals so amazing is that they always were a fourth away from each other, and I was like, I don't know how to do that, but that sounds cool.
And also, sometimes there's a major fourth, sometimes there's a minor fourth, and it didn't, like this, it
created that tension but really nice combination. So, Jeremy, what works best for you on this record?
Probably one. The energy is what attracted me first. I mean, the first song that I heard was Shoelace, and I was just like, this is a lot of stuff that I like about the Green Mind era Dinosaur Jr. But something that this band has that Dinosaur Jr. doesn't really have, and it's not, it's not a criticism of Dinosaur Jr. necessarily, but they kind of have clever lyrics that also kind of hook you in, where you're just like, it's a little funny and sad at the same time. They're not trying to drag people down. I mean, even when it's a song about a shitty situation, it's got little funny lines like what's the one, footprints on the back of my shirt. Just little things here that you just throw in that I thought that's what makes me think of Dinosaur Jr. It's not Dinosaur Jr., but They Might Be Giants. It's not just the tone that he has sometimes. It's the just the quirky lyrics and little expressions here and there that you don't generally hear in alternative music, especially in the 90s. But yeah, I mean, I think the voice, I can understand that rubbing people the wrong way. I hear, a little bit of They Might Be Giants. I also, every once in a while, when he slows down, there's a little bit of Willie Nelson in his voice. It's a tiny little bit. I was listening to it today and I was like, you know what? He sounded like Willie Nelson for just a minute there. So it just makes me wonder what all of his influences are, where they were pulling from. But man, the drummer is on fire. That's probably the craziest thing about this album is just, even on the slower songs, there's some pretty cool fills and stuff going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't skip a single song on the album, but we'll get to the things that might be skippable if you're not just going to skip the entire album because of the person's vocals.
I don't know how anyone who's listened to 90s alternative would listen to this and go, I don't like the vocal. I mean, this hits so many like familiar vocal sounds. Yeah. Like there's nothing about this that's abrasive or off-putting. I mean, it might be too sugary for some people if they're like into harder music, but it really isn't until like Never Learn has, because it's a little bit softer, his voice doesn't work for me quite as well on that song, but it's not enough to like put me off from listening to the record. And I agree with you, like on the again, and then a song like The Right Choice, I don't necessarily love that like gallopy thing that's going on with the drums, but I recognize that the drums are doing some really cool stuff in that song. And I think it's is it Fell from the Sun? One of the songs
got some dynamics in it where you get the drum stops and stuff like that. It's basically the first song of the B-side of the album. So it's right after Thin Ice. And so Thin Ice has that fade, and it's kind of a slow, honestly, well, I have some things to say about that. But yeah, the Fell from the Sun is one, it's really fast. What is that? What's the time on that? Is that, yeah, it's a minute and a half.
Minute and a half.
Yeah, and the drums are just amazing on that song. And the band is so tight on that. It's just, I just think that's a great song.
There was another track. Is it not Down on Me? There's one that has a great distorted bass sound. Maybe it was Thin Ice. No, not Thin Ice. I don't know where. It's somewhere in there that has a big fuzzed bass and it sounds real nice. But I love the fact that they have a minute and a half long, just blazing dynamic song like Fell from the Sun, which, some of those dynamic parts remind me of like the Who, like with the fills that he's doing. And like, there's a very interesting combination of sounds and it's this tight little pop rocks approach, but then with some very big ideas and performances within those, which I enjoyed.
So if you especially if you listen to it loud or on headphones, there's this thing that they do, and I don't know if they do it on purpose, and part of it might be something that puts people off, is I don't know if the bass players sing this. It sounds like it's just Seth doing another vocal line. Like I think at times it's 3 times him and not generally anybody else in the band, but he sings like exactly like an octave or two below the melody that he's singing. And so it's this low, kind of crackly, monotone. It kind of sounds like it's monotonous, but it's really not. I mean, it's going with the rest of the melody. And he also seems to like to use this effect. And I think that Jay may have been referring to this on the guitar. There's like a lot of times there's that extra layer. I don't know if is it like a, I'm trying to remember what the amplifier is called. It's like like an organ amplifier or like a Wurlitzer amplifier where it has like a rotating piece inside of it.
A Leslie organ?
Yeah. So it sounds, the guitar kind of sounds like that, and it's just this extra layer under the actual guitar melody. But that combined with that croaky low voice, I don't know if they're doing it on purpose or not, but sometimes they just come together. And if you don't hate those things, it sounds really cool when you realize how those two pieces are working together. So I wish I knew what that was that he's using, what effect he's using, because he does use that on at least half the songs on the album. That that weird guitar organ sound, or maybe there's keyboards. I don't see any credits for keyboards though, as far as I know.
Yeah, I think it's guitar. There's definitely there's some movement going on there. I don't know if it's from phase shifting or like you said, like a Leslie or a combination of both. But yeah, what's cool about that is like those then create their own notes and overtones, and then those collide with other sounds and start to make new sonically things happen in your ears when you hear those two things together. And
Yeah.
the other vocal is very unusual, like the way he's singing that that harmony. It is croaky. It's like a really low kind of croaky
It kind
tone.
of sounds like what was that show from the late 80s or the 90s? Was a Small Wonder? It sounds like if the girl from Small Wonder was like singing, it never turns out right. It's just it's I don't know. It's just kind of robotic in a way. It's weird.
Yep.
Jay, what doesn't work for you on the record?
I'm not a huge fan when the band gets overly quirky. So Evel Knievel, like, no.
I'm gonna keep it all here inside my head. I know that when I die, at least I know, at least I tried wasting. I'm getting higher than I've ever known. Evel Knievel, fly like an eagle. Evel Knievel, died like an eagle. It's a long way down, a long way to go before I hit the ground. I could die and I won't care. Anticipation in the air, wasted. I'm getting higher than I've ever known. Evel Knievel, fly like an eagle. Evel Knievel, died like an eagle. I killed the fear.
The second half of the record too gets in to kind of a bit of a rut, I think, in this punk rhythm feel. So Fell from the Sun really through the rest of the record, Down on Me isn't like that, but a lot of the rest of the what's left to me gets into that groove, and it just feels less dynamic to me. The songs are okay. It just doesn't feel unique or as original. I hear more They Might Be Giants too in the second half of the record. So to me, it's really, really strong start, and then it starts to fizzle out after Evel Knievel. What didn't work for
Interesting.
you, Tim? Anything else?
I agree with you that the first half, I would go up to 7, Fell from the Sun. Like, to me, those first 7 tracks are super strong. Each has its own personality, but they're all like pushing the envelope in terms of like they feel like they're on especially the up tempo stuff feels like it's like on the edge, like they are on top of it. And then when they start to slow down, like on Down on Me, and sometimes it's only for parts of songs, but I don't necessarily love them at a slower tempo. It's just not as interesting. Like I could do 10 songs, 2 minutes each, blasting through them, and I'd be happy for that record. Because when his voice, when it gets into like the more like sing-songy mid-tempo, less abrasive, it sounds like the things that are not as that I don't really listen to, like They Might Be Giants, or just stuff that's I just need a little bit of dissonance and edge with a lot of the music that I'm listening to. I'm always looking for that weird twist, and there's some solid tracks, but I don't think that they push the envelope the way that the earlier stuff does. So, Jeremy, is there anything on here that doesn't work? Or any particular song maybe that doesn't work that you kick off?
Well, first of all, I'm surprised that Jay didn't mention this, talking about other bands that he hears. But I mean, that last song on the album, My Limit, it sounds like you're getting ready to listen to a Spin Doctors song. Like when that thing starts, you're like, oh, is this going to be Spin Doctors? Did I put what happened here? Did it just change to a different disc? What's going on? It's got, if you just go back and listen to it thinking Spin Doctors, you'll be like, yeah. I mean, I still like the song. Yeah.
that drum fill, totally.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Which I don't have I mean, I'm okay with the Spin Doctors, I don't really, they don't bother me that much.
I've made my peace. I've made my peace.
But Thin Ice, which would be the closing, if you had it on a cassette, that would be the closing track on the A side. Again, I like the song, but to me, it feels incomplete. What I think it's only like a couple of minutes. So it's 3 minutes for what the song is made up of. Should have been 2 minutes, and I don't even know. It feels like it's incomplete. Like they he kind of does that little do part, just over and over again, and then it takes forever for it to fade out. But the reason that I'm okay with it is because I feel like it's still a really great lead in to Fell from the Sun. Like you hit that beginning of the B side and that song kicks in, and first he does this kind of slightly off key singing of the main line of the song, and then so you're thinking, oh, this is going to be kind of slower again, and then the song kicks off and it's a minute and a half of just insanity. So I mean, there's nothing on here that I skip. But again, I got this back in the day when you buy a CD and you might like one or two songs and you're open to the rest of them, but then as you listen to it and it gets more cohesive for you, you just end up liking the whole thing. So, if you gave this to me now where I could easily just pick a couple of songs and put them in a playlist and move on, I don't know what would happen, but as it stands, I have such a history with it that I just like every song on the album.
Yeah, there's a couple, like Weighted Down has some interesting stuff. Like there's some interesting note choices. Vocally, it makes it sound darker. And I don't know that I necessarily I'm 100% on board with that because I just like the pop side of it. I was trying to think, Fell from the Sun sounds like something to me and I can't put my finger on it.
Like a Pixies song?
It's almost like a Pixies meets Red Cross meets, there's this building bombast to that song and the choruses that reminded me of something like a little more adventurous. Not that this band isn't adventurous, but like a band that pushes that. Maybe it's even like a Jellyfish thing that there's just a little bit more happening with that particular song from the way that they build the parts and the melody and the main part. But somebody mentioned in the comments about, maybe it was Willie, that he thought the voice was the weakest link. And I don't really think so. I think it's the weak link on the songs that don't necessarily work for me, but I think in the songs that do work, I think it actually works really well. I don't really have an issue. Jay, you have an issue with his voice?
I only have an issue when the songs aren't great. So
right.
And I don't know if that's a combination of the two. Like there's certain songs to fit his voice better and it works better, or if the songs were sung by other people, they would change. I feel like he has enough range. Like to me, the They Might Be Giants has one note. They always just sound like that. Every line, every song, everything always sounds the way that they sound. And I don't feel like that happens here. Like we go to he shifts around enough that I'm like, oh, it's kind of like feels like a little bit like Weezer, or feels a little bit like Fountains of Wayne vocally, or like there's enough range in there where it doesn't bother me, and he's in key, and is technically a good singer.
So this came out in what, 96 we mentioned? Is that what it was? This to me strikes as a perfect example of either they get one novelty hit or they're not going to break through.
Oh.
Yeah. Like Derailer or Shoelace. I mean, even Evel Knievel, if you had the right video for that song.
Oh, totally.
You could totally get a video for that on
MTV.
MTV.
It's a hooky song.
Yeah.
I just don't like it. But I don't like a lot of the late 90s hit songs because for that reason, like they were like goofy novelty songs.
Yeah. Right. Whereas
and often didn't represent what the bands did.
And Derailer's a great lead-off track.
What I want is a simple world with a simple girl. Simple life and top it all off with a cinnamon twirl. Oh, but life is not so sweet when you're out on your head. Trying hard to keep it on track, but you're off the rail instead. I'm a derailer, didn't mean to derail her. I'm a derailer, yeah. I know what I need to take a break for sanity's sake. To stick it out makes no sense, too much at the stake. But I'm a fool and I can't stop doing what I should not do. Two voices inside of my head, I don't know which one is true.
You could probably get away with this. That is like a single. I don't know. This was on EMI, so I imagine they pushed it to at least college radio. So, but I do not recall this band at all. And this is my assistant music director era of college radio, and I don't remember this coming in. So there were
I think
50 a week, but
I think on 97X on WOXY they played Shoelace. That's the only song I ever remember hearing from them, and for a little stretch, I think it was kind of in their medium rotation. My best guess is that somebody at the station, probably liked it and was pushing for it a little bit, but probably 6 months after the first time I heard it, I don't know if I ever heard it again on the radio.
Interesting.
It was short-lived, and yeah, they'd never really followed up with anything else. I honestly, I think that this was a situation where what alternative hit album did EMI have? When did they even come close? I mean, the last thing when I think EMI, the last thing I think about is Empire from Queensryche. I think that's on EMI, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. It is.
Yeah, that's like the last hit that I remember from EMI.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what they were doing is they probably were just saying, well, we're going to fold here soon, so let's just take what money we have and see if we can pick up like one quirky alternative act to cash in on what we haven't been able to cash in on this entire decade, and and then whatever marketing efforts they had just fizzled out because they probably spent everything on in advance and recording and maybe a few other albums, and that was it. I mean, is EMI still around?
Well, I was going to say, I think like in the 90s, they're primarily a UK label. Well, it looks like they had, I'm looking at what their 90s releases were like. It's a lot of, I guess they had Queensryche, Red Hot Chili Peppers. Maybe that was just for.
That must have been before they signed a Deaf American or whatever.
Yeah, that was the earlier records. They had the Blow Monkeys and Morrissey, Cowboy Junkies. Some of these are just singles and stuff as well. But wasn't Blur on EMI?
They might have been, because I know they did the song BLUREMI, which I assume was a reference to
I think so too.
the label. Yeah, I mean that album did okay. I mean, it didn't do as well as the self-titled, but
No, I mean they had the Mock Turtles, they had Chapter House, they had T-Paw. It's Right Said Fred. The Right Said Fred I'm Too Sexy single came out on EMI. So there you go.
Would that have been the late 90s?
That
Were
was
we just
91.
talking about novelties?
Oh,
If you go to Discogs and go to the EMI records, you got a lot to sort through. 17,000 releases to get through.
yeah, I wish it would let you filter them by type.
Yeah, they don't make it easy on you.
Huh. It does say they went on hiatus, and the label was relaunched as a label by Universal in 2020. I don't know how long that hiatus was, but yeah, weird.
I guess so. EMI, and then there's also is not a label. It's a publishing company for music. I don't know. Maybe that's what Blur was mad about. That's why they wrote that song. Let's get into our overall ratings on this record. Worthy album, better EP, decent single. We'll give the Patreon results in a moment. But Jay, where do you land on Derailer by Little John?
I'm at an EP. It's really a tale of two sides here for me. I think everything up through Down on Me minus Evel Knievel. So Derailer, Scared, Shoelace, finally got it. Then Ice, Fell from the Sun, and Down on Me. I'm all in on. And then after that, it gets spotty of either sort of punk rhythms or just plotting or funky just stuff that's just not as strong. And I think at that point the voice does start to pop out to me as being less original, and as the songs get softer, the voice kind of stands out as is not a plus. So really strong EP for me though. What about you, Tim?
I'm going to agree with you pretty much the same. I'm going to take like the first 7 songs, and that's my EP, which is probably about 15, 18 minutes.
15.
Yeah, something in there. I mean, those are all really tight. I like a lot of that stuff that is up tempo and pushing the tempo forward. So yeah, I think a lot of people who probably have never heard this record are probably going to be like, what? I want to check this out. And then we're going to be like, no, you can't, because you can't stream it anywhere. You'll never find it. Haha. So maybe Seth could get this on some streaming services, since EMI is not doing that.
Just join us at dmounion.com and
or that.
We'll hook you up.
Jeremy, tell us where the album better EP, decent single. I'm going to guess not a decent single.
No. I would give it a worthy album. Again, how would I feel about it if I had it now, where I have way much more to listen to? And, I'm not buying a CD and committing to it for a while to see how I feel. But I mean, I don't recall listening to it for the first time. Like, I don't have like a solid recollection of it, but I really do feel like when I listened to this the first time, I was pretty happy with the entire album. I think if there was anything that kind of bothered me after listening to it a couple of times, it was probably the way that Thin Ice fades out and the song just doesn't feel complete to me. But then it's a perfect lead in for the next song. So I end up appreciating it for another reason. So, I mean, I can see how the second half gets a little, it doesn't have quite that energy, especially of the majority of the first half of the album. But I'm not the They Might Be Giants feel, which is kind of what you get when they slow down, even though there's a little bit more vocal melody. You could probably find some more vocal melody in some later They Might Be Giant stuff too. But Um, uh, I don't know. It doesn't bother me enough. I mean, I appreciate the songs. I like quirky stuff, even if it's a little bit slow. Um, I still agree that Evel Knievel was probably one of the weaker points on the album, just because it's a little too obvious. Like it's basically a song about smoking pot. I mean, it's just too blatant, and it's not, clever, hooky songs about failed relationships and stuff like that. So it's not. I don't know. It is a little bit of an outlier, but I'm okay with it. I give it a worthy album still.
Well, the majority of our voters agree with you, Jeremy. 67% went worthy album. 17% went better EP, and 17% went decent single. So it was a tie for better EP and decent single. But the crowd has spoken, and they have turned their back on us, Jay. They went like this. They put the thumbs down to us and our better EP. So confidence is shaken. We'll have to rebuild that.
We appreciate our honesty, though, right?
I hope so.
Agree with us.
Right? When I was searching for images, by the way, the only one that I found of the CD was of the promo copy.
You mean with the stamp on the disc?
Yeah, I don't think that this was actually released without that stamp.
Yeah,
because every picture has it.
Maybe that was done on purpose. I mean, I don't have a cutout, but they put the zigzag through the barcode. So good luck scanning this at a POS terminal.
That'll be a big issue.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing this album to the podcast, Jeremy. We would have never discovered it without you. Literally, it's not out there for people to discover. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah. Just I was trying to. I kind of mentioned it when I emailed you. I was trying to bring something to the table that wasn't streaming, and it was out of print. And my original idea started streaming about 8 months ago, so I had to go to this one. And my original idea is doing pretty well in the recent polls, but it's in a bit of a fight with. I'm trying to think of what the other album is that it's in a fight with right now for the top spot.
Well, we should let people know that we have weekly polls going on now. We have a tournament style June poll thing happening. We've already done group 1. There's going to be 3 groups. We're in group 2 right now as we record this. And at the end, we will have a final shoot off or shootout.
Right
Rancid
now
is the other album.
Yeah, we're tied Poster Children and Rancid.
Yeah.
So the top 2 go through. So it's looking like both of those will go through.
Well, there you go. Yeah, there's nothing close, nothing in double digits like the way that Poster Children and Rancid are. So we're going to have a real interesting group once we get to the final at the end of the month. I like this. It provides a weekly opportunity for everybody to argue.
That's just what we need.
More arguing.
And the group 1 winners were Heat Miser, Cop and Speeder, and the Matthew Good Band, Beautiful Midnight.
Wait, so there was 3 winners the first?
No, 2.
That was 2.
Oh, there's 2.
It's just Matthew Good Band, Beautiful Midnight sounds like 2 bands.
Got it.
So Cop and Speeder sounds like a band too.
Yeah, it does.
Heat Miser record.
It was Heat Miser, Cop, and then Speeder. All right, Cop and Speeder. So Heat Miser, Matthew Good Band, and then it's looking like, as we said, right now, Poster Children, Rancid. So you'll have to find out what the third one is by joining us at Patreon. And then you get to vote in it. You also get to vote in our various other album polls for like this album, where you can vote in whether it's a worthy album or a better EP or decent single. You also get access to our 80s episodes, which will be recording a new one. Excuse me. Recording a new one very shortly. That was a previous poll. And you can check out all the...
What are we doing?
The replacements.
Who's that? I'm kidding.
And we're doing an album that they named very graciously after me. It's called Tim.
It's called Minichi.
Yes. All the songs reference my childhood. Like Bastards of Young. I'm sure you've heard that.
Yes.
That's me. That song is about me.
Obviously.
We are the sons of no one, the bastards of young. That's what I used to say when I was 3.
Now give me my pudding.
Now give me my pudding, bitches. Let's talk about how these albums ended up in our hopper. That's by going to digmeoutpodcast.com. You go to our suggest an album link, drop it in the form. It ends up in our hopper. And then Zora, the hopper master, doles them out. She could put that in her resume, hopper master. It's like hops. It's like she's stirring.
Oh, you worked in a brewery?
Yeah. There you go. And you can also read the box newsletter at our Patreon by signing up for it at digmeoutpodcast.com. That's a weekly newsletter that we send out. 2 new reviews of 80s and 90s relevant music, movies, books, TV shows, documentaries, what have you. And a new release calendar. So much stuff being released every week. It's hard to keep track of it. All the COVID releases that didn't come out are now coming out. So we got like 4 or 5 albums every week we could talk about of new releases. It's very 90s-esque, to be honest. There's so much music coming out. And lastly, Apple Podcasts is where you go if you like what you heard and you want to leave us some positive feedback. Jeremy, thank you for joining us. Thank you for making the pick. We look forward to chatting with you on the boards. And we look forward to what you have in store next year. Hopefully it'll be even more obscure. And it might not even have ever been released on CD. It was only a cassette with a napkin that was scribbled.
All right. I have something in mind that is obscure. It was
Excellent.
something that I put it in the hopper, but I think it fell out. And it's going to be weird. Not really weird, but you're going to be like, where did this come from?
We got a year to prep.
Just letting you know, I don't have a cassette deck anymore, so I need to rip a MP3 or something.
I have one, but it doesn't work. I need to get it to work. I have my boombox from when I was a kid, and the radio still works, but the cassette deck is melted.
Yeah, I discovered my cassette deck, which I loved and had. It was a great piece when I got it, but I think it just sat for so long that it was belt driven, and the belts just deteriorated. And I opened it up, and I'm like, I'm never going to find all these belts again. So I just threw it out.
Right. Yeah. I can't get rid of mine because on the cassette deck window, I stuck a Garbage Pail Kid sticker that says Tongue-Tied Tim. And I can't ever get rid of that. So it's just going to sit in my garage. When I'm working in the garage building or fixing something, I put on the radio, and I always put on the classic rock station like a true dad, so I can listen to Boston and Aerosmith while I'm.
I was hoping you were going to say you put in an Eddie and the Cruisers cassette or something.
No, I throw on the classic rock station. I want
you
some
just
REO.
have
I need REO Speedwagon.
One just vintage early 80s cassette that you just sitting there ready to go in.
What I need is an 8-track player that in the garage with a bunch of 8-tracks in like a wooden shelf I can pop in, so I can hear a song and then have it cut off right in the middle and have to flip the 8-track over
to get that authentic experience.
Yes, exactly. All right, for Jay, I'm Tim. We're out. We'll be back next week with another episode of Dig Me Out.
Yeah.